This is Dave with NAPCO Tech Support. In this video, I will explain what debounce interval is and how to make sure you have the correct settings in your radio for your account. Feel free to pause the video at any time if it makes it easier to follow along. When you set up your Starlink radio to report to an IP receiver, you will notice to the bottom left of the screen, your pole fail timeout setting has changed to a debounce interval setting. The options you have in this setting are determined by the billing plan you selected on the ComNet website when you registered your radio. This setting determines how quickly your central station receiver will transmit a polling failure with the radio to your central station's automation. The polling rate is always half of your debounce interval, and you cannot manually change it. In my example here, my debounce interval is set at 60 minutes, which makes my polling rate 30 minutes, meaning that my radio will poll with the central station's IP receiver every 30 minutes. And if my radio fails 2 30-minute polls within a 60-minute time frame, then the central station receiver will generate a polling failure on its side. So, if the debounce was set to 6 hours, then the polling rate would be 3 hours. If the debounce was set to 6 minutes, then the polling rate would be 3 minutes, and so on. To clarify, the radio does not transmit the polling failure, so you will not see the signal in the radio's signal log. The signal is generated by the receiver at the central station. The central station receiver determines what the debounce should be, so before you program the debounce on your radio, make sure you check with your central station first. NAPCO Tech Support will not know what the setting is on your central station's receiver. Only your central station will know that. Also, the way a receiver is programmed for debounce varies across the models and manufacturers. For the SureGuard systems 2, 3, and 4, theirs was handled by the line card, so every account on that line card needed to be the same debounce interval. On the SureGuard System 5 and the NAPCO VIP receiver, the debounce is attached to the DNIS, and on the Bosch 6200, it's by each account. You can see here in my NAPCO VIP receiver settings, I have a DNIS code for 16 hours, one for an hour, and one for 90 seconds, and one for 200 seconds. If I wanted one of my customers in this demo to have the 60-minute debounce, then I would assign them the 00060 DNIS I have defined on my receiver. Note, these DNISs are customizable, so your CS will have their own DNIS number created for this. It most likely will not be the same as mine. If the settings on your radio and your CS receiver don't match, then your two devices will never sync up, and your debounce will not work properly. For example, if you have 24 hours set on the knock, but your receiver is expecting a 60-minute debounce, that means your radio will only poll once every 12 hours, while your receiver is expecting a poll every 30 minutes. In most cases, this will create a scenario where you are getting multiple poll fails a day. This isn't something that NAPCO can fix for you. Once again, we have no way of knowing what the setting on your central station's receiver is. So, if you run into this problem, then you need to contact your central station. When the radio fails to poll twice in a row, the receiver at the central station will generate a failure, and the failure will show with a signal code of YC. Some central stations don't show the actual code on their signal app, and instead will just show the text readout from their automation program. Sometimes it will show as a COM fail, and other central stations will have it programmed as a loss of central polling. Either way, the first thing you should do is log into the NAPCO NOC and check your signal log. If you don't see a COM fail listed in the signal log, then you know the signal didn't come from the radio or the alarm panel, so the next thing you should do is call your central station and ask them for the signal code that came through. If it's a YC, then you know it's a poll fail and not a COM fail. Another signal you may see is a YK. YK is the restoral of the poll fail. You see, the ShoreGuard receivers were the first IP receivers to really take off, and they set the standard for what IP receiver-generated signals would be. And they chose to use the SIA format for these signals. For the sake of consistency, other manufacturers, including NAPCO, continued with this standard, which is why the NAPCO VIP receiver also generates YCs and YKs for pole fails and restores. So keep this in mind. If you see a YC or a YK in your signal log at your central station, remember, this signal did not come from the radio or the NAPCO NOC. It was generated by the receiver at the central station. So, what do you do when you start getting these signals at your central station? Well, as stated earlier, the first thing you want to do is log into the NAPCO NOC. And then you will verify your radio is currently communicating with the NOC and that it's not actually down. The easiest way to do this is to click on the check-ins button on the radio's page, and when you get to the check-ins page, click on the button that says Press to Send Test. This will attempt to ping the radio. If it successfully gets through, you will be able to refresh the page and see a new timestamp. The timestamp will always be in Eastern Time. If it fails to communicate with your radio, then you will get an error informing you of the failure, and you will need to go out to the site and find out what is wrong with your radio. You can also go into the signal log on the NOC and check the box that says Supervisory and then click the search button. You should see your polling signals here, and you should see them at the same variable as your polling rate. Meaning, if your polling rate is set to 30 minutes, then you should see a poll every 30 minutes. If you don't see any polls here, and you are getting fails on your check-in tab, then you definitely need to go to the site and check on your radio. However, if your radio is successfully communicating with the NOC on the check-ins tab, but you aren't seeing supervisory signals on the signal log, then you might want to power cycle the radio and see if it starts checking in again. Now, if your radio is checking in on the check-ins tab and you are seeing supervisory signals in your signal log at the same rate as your polling rate, then that usually means you have the wrong debounce time selected. This is the most common cause of the YC and YK signals. If your radio has the wrong debounce time, then it's not going to properly sync with the receiver, which can cause a couple different results. Most often, you will continuously get YC signals at your CS, but sometimes you will see it going back and forth between YC and YK. Both are caused by the radio having the wrong debounce interval set. The easiest way to solve this is to call your central station and ask them what it should be. NAPCO will not know this answer. Only your central station does. Now, you may notice that if you set your debounce for 12 hours or more on a ShoreGuard receiver, you will see unsupervised to the left of your IP address. On ShoreGuard receivers, their max supervision time is 18 hours. So once you get above that, they are no longer capable of supervising the IP transmission path. And the radio will also include a 603 contact ID code that it will transmit to your central station receiver for its check-ins. However, you will not encounter this issue with the NAPCO VIP receiver or the Bosch IP receiver. You cannot disable the 603 supervision independently. It will only turn off if you are using a debounce interval of 6 hours or less. Usually this will be the case if you have a radio on a standard intrusion system, so you will have to accept this as the norm. On ShoreGuard receivers, their max supervision time is 18 hours, so once you get above that, they are no longer capable of supervising the IP transmission path. For the vast majority of intrusion radios, they will be set at 7 days, and you won't have an option in your plan to change it. So make sure your central station knows that if they don't receive the 603 code within 24 hours or 7 days, then it is a fail to test, just like a traditional test timer. But in this case, it is a 603 instead of a 602, so they can differentiate this signal from the panel's test timer. Now, when it comes to fire alarm systems, we have specific rules we have to follow. Starting with NFPA 72 2013 edition, section 26.6.3.1.5 states the following. Unless prohibited by the enforcing authority, governing laws, codes, or standards, a single transmission path may be used, and a failure of the path shall be enunciated at the supervising station within not more than 60 minutes. The failure to complete a signal transmission shall be enunciated at the protected premises in accordance with Section 10.15. This section number carried forward through the 2016, 2019, 2022, and 2025 editions, but they dropped the 1 and renumbered it as 26.6.3.5 in the later editions. So what this means is that if you have a fire radio, your debounce interval should most likely be set to 60 minutes unless explicitly stated by the authority having jurisdiction. For example, cities like New York, Chicago, Boston, and San Francisco all have their own rules for what this setting should be. So if you're not sure what yours should be, you need to speak with your AHJ. NAPCO Tech Support will not know what your local jurisdiction's rules are. As always, if you're looking for documentation on any current NAPCO devices, or if you're looking for more videos like this, head on over to our tech library at tech.napcosecurity.com.